Welcome back to Simply Holistic. Dr. Tony here. Last video, we were talking about diabetes, specifically water diabetes, not sugar diabetes, water diabetes. This time, I want to touch on what I would consider to be a strange connection. Did you know that type 2 diabetes, which is actually sugar diabetes, type 2 diabetes mellitus, T2DM, did you know that type 2 is actually connected to schizophrenia? Seriously. This was actually written in 2022. In the NIH, evidence that the pituitary gland, so we're talking really about the pituitary. The pituitary gland connects, the pituitary gland up here inside your brain connects type 2 diabetes and schizophrenia. Does that mean every person walking around with type 2 is schizophrenic? I hope not. Based on large-scale genetic analysis, okay. So, I gotta admit, this one caught my attention. Because I looked at that and they said there's a connection there. I was like, what? Previous studies of background. Previous studies on European samples have obtained inconsistent results regarding the genetic correlation between type 2 and schizophrenia. Oh yeah, I would say they're inconsistent because I wouldn't have thought there was a connection there. The large-scale genetic analysis may provide additional evidence with enhanced power. We aim to review that. A range of complementary approaches were employed. Okay, results, conclusion. Here we show that a negative genetic correlation exists between schizophrenia and type 2. So, and I'll be honest here too, the phrasing, negative genetic correlation, in my, logically in my mind, negative genetic correlation. Okay, so they're not connected, right? Wrong. It says a negative genetic correlation, so in my mind, immediately I'm thinking negative. Okay, so it's negative. It's negative. It's not. It's not positive. It's negative. It's not. Well, when you look up that particular phrase, for morphological traits that are negatively correlated, the genetic correlation between them might strongly influence patterns of morphological divergence in shape. Negatively correlated means there's a genetic connection that influences other areas. Negatively correlated means there is a genetic connection. That genetic connection then has influence over other areas. So here we show that there is a negative genetic correlation, which means they are connected. Schizophrenia and type 2 diabetes. Mind blown. They are connected at the whole genome, autosome, locus, and causal variant levels. We identify pituitary gland as a common effective organ for both diseases. The pituitary is in common with schizophrenia and type 2 diabetes. This highlights the importance of molecular metabolism and neuroendocrine modulation in the pituitary gland, which may be responsible for the initiation of type 2 in schizophrenic patients. So, background. So, I gotta wonder, am I the only one that got my mind blown when, if I the only one that was here in shock and awe when I even saw that headline, read that headline? Wow. Okay, so according to the sentence I just read, the cause of type 2 in schizophrenic patients. So according to their perspective, the person was already schizophrenic and then developed type 2. Okay. I have no problem believing and accepting that a person that is schizophrenic can develop type 2 because anybody can develop type 2. that isn't like out of the box. It isn't far out there. It's not beyond reality. Because anybody can develop type 2. Still, it's not the development of type 2 that was the shock for me. It's that both of them are connected genetically through the pituitary gland. The pituitary is connecting both. Wow, okay. So, background. As human economic development has progressed, both schizophrenia and type 2 diabetes complex polygenic inherited disorders have become growing challenges that, to date, lack effective solutions. Accumulating evidence from clinical samples demonstrates that the prevalence of type 2 in patients with schizophrenia is elevated 2 to 3 times compared with the general population. Okay, so they're saying that if you have schizophrenia, you're 2 to 3 times more likely to have develop type 2 diabetes, whereas the etiology for the co-occurrence of schizophrenia and type 2 is multifactorial. Recent studies have shown that drug-naive patients with their first episode of schizophrenia have an increased risk of type 2. Moreover, the increased risk of type 2 is more apparent in young adults with schizophrenia, therefore a better understanding of the genetic relationship between and common genetic basis of schizophrenia and type 2 is pivotal for providing insights into the treatment and prevention of these diseases. Genetic relationship between schizophrenia and type 2 diabetes. Common genetic basis of schizophrenia and type 2 diabetes. Does it make you wonder if you have type 2, if you can develop schizophrenia? I mean, that's, okay. I know. I am non-traditional. I don't think in traditional terms. I don't. So, that's where my mind goes. By reading the way they wrote this, that's where my mind goes. You've got type 2. Does that mean that genetically you can develop schizophrenia? I mean, that's the question. The first question that hit my mind. Don't let this scare you. Don't let this scare you off. That's just how my mind works. It is. It's just, and I always have questions when I'm reading a science study because, they don't answer everything when they're writing it either. Or when they're doing the study, they don't answer everything either. There's always questions left, and then more questions arise from the study. So my mind is always processing that, always asking questions from what I'm reading. And that, in this instance, is where my mind just went. So with all the, it is a bit troubling, really, because when I think of all the people walking around with type 2 that have developed type 2 diabetes, which we find through the insulin test, with all the people walking around with type 2 diabetes, then my mind says, oh, holy cow, with all those people that are walking around with type 2, how many of those are now going to develop schizophrenia since it's genetic? That's the question that hits my mind. That's where it just went. All right. Some inherited factors rarely correlate with confounders and exhibit no reverse causation. Several studies with limited sample sizes have investigated the involved genes common to both schizophrenia and type 2. Limited sample sizes, okay. And have reported negligible genetic correlations between the two. This conflicts with a weak genome-wide negative correlation between the two, identified in a forthcoming article with a large-scale sample size of European subjects. Well, everybody knows the European diet is different than the American diet. These inconsistent genetic analysis results may be because the use of limited sample sizes and certain analytical methods potentially result in underpowered correlation between analysis, produce bias, and overestimate the results. Moreover, genome-wide association studies involving different population groups can provide samples from global populations to address some of the rising or existing Eurocentric bias, which enhances the ability to identify disease associations and ensures that the findings are mostly relevant to mostly relevant to all populations. So, yes, the reality is we know that European diet is different than the American diet, which does make a difference in the health. Yeah, American health, people that live here, their health is different from people that live and go by the European food available. I wouldn't say diet, but available food system. Because, the food system here. I live here, and I don't like the food system here. I know somebody's saying, well, come to Europe. Not quite that easy. I'm just saying, I live here. I know how the government processes, processes the food. I know the hoops that they make companies jump through. I am extremely familiar with all this. I live here. I know how that works. I don't like the system. I don't like the food that's produced. At the same time, I know, call me a conspiracy theorist, but I know there are reasons behind the legal hoops that have to be jumped through to put something on the shelf. There's a reason. Yeah, they're health reasons, doc. They're health reasons. We gotta. Yeah, I actually very, very strongly disagree with that. The legal hoops are not for health reasons. There, I said it. I put it out there. The legal hoops the companies have to jump through to put food products on our shelves here in America are not for health reasons. The declining health in our country, in our society, it's being done on purpose. And yes, I'm here in this office combating it. I am. I'm combating it, but it's being done on purpose. It really is. It's just, as I said, call me a conspiracy theorist, but unless you can prove to me that I'm wrong, because I can prove to you that I'm right, unless you can prove to me that I'm wrong, that I missed something, that I'm wrong, I will have to take the label of conspiracy theorist because it's not a conspiracy, because I can prove it. But you know what? At the same time, their system, okay, this is going to sound really bad. I have nothing against capitalism. That's why I'm here. I mean, that's what's enabling the office to grow. Their system is helping my business to grow. So government, keep doing what you're doing. Keep doing what you're doing because you're helping my business to grow. Because I can be here and actually help people get healthy while you're helping the rest of the people destroy their health. That is what their system is doing. That's just bottom line. Okay. So anyway, soapbox again. Yes, I realize I'm on the soapbox again. Schizophrenia type 2. Wouldn't be surprised if they were intentionally connected also. No, okay. Okay. That goes through the okay. That goes through the gland, the pituitary. So stay on track here. This goes through the genetic process of pituitary schizophrenia type 2 genetic correlation. All right. European diet's better than American diet. Get myself caught back up here. Okay. In this study, based on summary data from European and East Asian populations, including a million and a half people, multiple complementary genomic analysis approaches were utilized to explore the genetic basis for type 2 and schizophrenia at different levels, such as the whole genome, autosomes, loci, and causal variants. We aim to provide more evidence of the genetic basis for the comorbidity of the two diseases. First, in addition to performing a linkage disequilibrium, holy cow, the language in these studies. Okay, we're just gonna dive. We would just be diving into a bunch of technical language, which is not my purpose for this. These are connected. Okay, data and methods. Data collected from the databases of the Psychiatric Genomics Consortium and the Diabetes Genetics Replication and Meta-Analysis Consortium upon request. The detailed demographic characteristics are summarized. Okay. Quality of the data sets was controlled by applying data filters. Genetic correlation analysis. First, the heritability of each disorder and the genome-wide correlation between schizophrenia and type 2 in both country populations. The pre-computed scores each reference was obtained 1,000 prior to analysis. We filtered out. I thought we were getting to a point here. Oh my goodness. Second, the heritability estimation software package. Okay. Finally, to qualify, to obtain reliable and noteworthy results, bidirectional analysis. Oh, holy cow. Positional gene mapping. Obviously, I did not look through this study before starting to talk about it. To map and prioritize genes, gene analysis was performed, cell type specific analysis to determine the effective cell type in human peripheral blood mononuclear cells for both schizophrenia and type 2. Okay, so they analyzed for both. Results. Holy cow, the results of the showed the interceptive genetic covariance between schizophrenia and type 2 for each population was 0.01, indicating negligible sample overlap. They love this overly technical language without actually getting to a conclusion. Genome-wide cross-site ethnic meta-analysis, another analysis. Positional gene mapping. And we're going through the same things again. Discussion. Holy cow, I'm over halfway through this. They haven't got to the point yet. Oh my gosh. Conclusion. Okay, back to basically where I started. In summary, a negative genetic correlation exists. I think I read that to you in the very beginning in the introduction. G. A negative genetic correlation exists between schizophrenia and type 2 at the whole genome, autosome, locus, and causal variant levels, which suggests that shared effective genes in a particular organ may contribute to schizophrenia and type 2. The pituitary gland was identified as a common effective organ. May be responsible. Okay, this highlights the importance of molecular metabolism and neuroendocrine modulation in the pituitary gland, which may be responsible for type 2 diabetes in schizophrenic patients. Okay, suggests that shared effective genes in the pituitary may contribute to both schizophrenia and type 2. For me, that would be a key takeaway. Not to preach the doom and gloom, but that would be a key takeaway for me. In summary, there is a negative genetic correlation between schizophrenia and type 2, and which suggests that shared genes in the pituitary, shared genes, so the genes in the pituitary gland, the pituitary gland is the common organ to schizophrenia and type 2 diabetes. Pituitary, the common organ. So there's genes in that gland that, let's say, trigger both schizophrenia and type 2. May be responsible for the identified negative genetic correlations. How do you handle that? To find out that the pituitary has genes within it that cause both type 2 and schizophrenia. The bigger a part of the bigger picture of this, we have been taught for decades that sugar intake causes type 2. Okay, catch this. We have been taught for decades to cut out the sugar because the sugar intake causes the diabetes. Doesn't that sound, I mean, isn't that something you have heard for a very long time? This study is saying there is a genetic cause from the pituitary to trigger diabetes, type 2 diabetes. Genetic, not from the sugar that you're taking in. Genetic. The same genetics can cause schizophrenia. Well, the type 2, we will handle, very effectively treat, can defeat the type 2. The schizophrenia, okay, I'll be honest. I've been honest. I always try to be honest, but I'll admit, I have always seen schizophrenia as a mental thing, not a biological thing. I have seen it that way. Okay, that's me. That's my perspective. And now this paper says, oh wait, schizophrenia is genetic. Well, if it's genetic, if schizophrenia is genetic from the pituitary, suddenly, in my perspective, it is no longer a mental thing at all. Like, at all. That just completely wiped it out of that category. I was under the impression schizophrenia was mental. But if it's genetic through the pituitary, that changes the whole game with schizophrenia. That means that even through this office, we can treat schizophrenia. Because if it's biological, if it's to do with makeup of your body, we can treat it. It's not mental. It's not mental. Okay. So, type 2 is not caused by sugar intake. Schizophrenia is not mental. We just learned 2 new things today. So, we can treat both, though. I knew we could treat type 2. I knew that. Check that out. So both of them are genetically connected, which brings schizophrenia into the biological realm. So we will roll with that. We will handle it. It's all good for us, and therefore for you as well, because then you don't have to worry about pharmaceuticals, mental pharmaceuticals, to deal with the mental issue. If schizophrenia is biological from the pituitary, you don't have to worry about the the pharmaceuticals to treat a mental condition. Have they seemed to have worked for you so far? If schizophrenia is genetic, we don't have to take a mental approach. We can take a biological approach because it's genetic. Biological approach. And we can treat it that way. There are herbs that cross the blood-brain barrier and do it very effectively. It might be, if you have a loved one that's fighting this, it might be something for you to consider. The choice is yours, but it might be something for you to consider then. So, okay, so it's bugging me. It's on my mind, so let me get back to the soapbox for a minute. The sugar. And type 2. I want you to realize, I want this to sink in. According to that paper, that study that was written and submitted, when was that again? This was submitted November 3rd, published, not submitted, published, November 3rd, 2022. Roughly a year ago, just over a year ago, the pituitary gland, not sugar intake. The pituitary, not sugar intake, led to the type 2. Cutting out your sugar doesn't actually help with your type 2, but I could have told you that a long time ago. I have been telling people that now for a long time. Cutting out the sugar does not help with the type 2. It's a band-aid. Yes, things are going to seem to level out or spike, or blood sugar wouldn't spike, but things are going to seem to level out in certain areas of your body. The health will spike in a positive way when you cut out your sugar temporarily. It ain't going to stay that way, though. It ain't going to stay. When you first cut out the sugar, you're probably going to feel pretty good, but it ain't going to stay that way, and it's not going to cure your diabetes or type 2 because it ain't from sugar. It ain't. It's how your body is processing or not processing the sugar, yes, but it's not directly from the sugar. Not directly. It's not. Okay. With all this said, let this settle on your brain. The pituitary genetically ties together type 2 diabetes, not sugar, and schizophrenia. The pituitary, it's genetic, it's biological. Find us at justsimplyholistic.com. Get our intake papers done, bring them in, let's review them together, go through our initial gamut of testing. Let's see if you have to deal with either of these. Let's see if you are dealing with either of these. And let's form the individualized healthcare that you need, because you are an individual. You're not a blanket. You are an individual. Let's learn, let's discover the individualized healthcare that you need for your conditions. We look forward to seeing and serving you soon.